And here we are once again in my garden. So, welcome. During the week, I found myself drifting off into one of those internal monologues. I'm rather fond of them, I have to confess. On this occasion, I was imagining I was back visiting my old school, doing a workshop and discussing my sculpture. Now, it's not a ridiculous thing to have been imagining, because I've done that before, and there was actually a possibility this year of doing it again. It just hasn't kind of worked out that way. But I was thinking about what I'd say all the same. For the record, I suppose it had been stimulated because someone asked how long one of my sculptures takes to make. And I started thinking, if one of the kids asked that, what I'd tell them. I'd tell them that the large head is sort of in the region of 750 hours. But what does that actually mean? And my little internal monologue, I was kind of breaking it down in terms of the course that they studied. So an international baccalaureate higher level course is 250 hours. So 3 times longer than one of their more difficult courses spread out over 2 years. Another way of looking at it would have been that their 2-year school diploma spread out over 75 weeks. So if you imagine doing 2 hours a day, Monday to Friday, for every single one of those 75 weeks, well then, there you'd have it. That's how long it took to make my sculptures. And I would imagine the children would be very impressed. Of course, there were no children. I was saying this all inside my head, in my gallery, while I was trying to distract myself from a rather tricky problem that I was unable to solve on my current sculpture. Funny, these internal voices, I was thinking. They are very annoying, and frankly, you sometimes question what purpose they really serve. But that is a question that I think I will be in a better position to answer in the weeks to come. Because during the week, not one, but 2 separate serendipitous comings together offered answers to that question. I mean, we often malign our internal voice, and this whole mindfulness meditation business is, to some degree, driven by trying to calm the monkey chatter in our brain. But during the week, I came across a very interesting book called, perfectly titled, Chatter by Dr. Ethan Kross, a neuroscientist or psychologist or something like that, a researcher at, I believe, Michigan University. I started reading it. It's very, very interesting. And more of his conclusions in a moment. Because it wasn't just that. There was a second sort of random gift from the nether regions of the internet came my way. In this case, a film by from the sort of YouTube stable channel Vsauce, which is one of those channels that sort of picks apart in a very amusing, entertaining way, kind of interesting, sometimes cutting-edge sort of science ideas or phenomena that you might think about, that it then kind of breaks down for you using probably totally unaware of scientific theories that you are totally unaware of. That's what I meant to say. Sorry, sort of stumbling around there. In this case, not the internal monologue, but the external words that seem to be completely out of control. Never mind. But he was investigating this phenomena and posed an interesting question with relation to some fascinating research performed at, I believe, a Japanese the Japanese Primate Research Institute. Now, the research they sort of introduce by showing you three numbers on your screen, and then the numbers sort of go away, and you're supposed to remember where they were. And of course, you can quite easily. The numbers are 1, 2, 3, and they sort of in a little triangle formation, so very easy to locate the position of them. They give you 3 boxes that you've got to put them in. So the numerical sequence and the triangular nature, very easy to do. Then they give you 9 numbers, and you only have the quickest glimpse of where they're located, and it's absolutely impossible to remember. But this is where it gets quite frankly mind-blowing, because the chimpanzees can do this. I mean, how? What's that all about? It's insane, but they can. I saw it with my own eyes, unless it's some sort of strange Japanese practical joke that they've played on the rest of the world. But why would they do that? So, no, I think it's genuine research. And whilst I didn't watch the whole video, because I'm trying to avoid going too deep down these rabbit holes, and it looked far too interesting, and my time for starting to work was getting closer, so I abandoned the video, and I haven't got back sort of around to watching it again. But he presents this idea that, of course, this is one of the big evolutionary shifts. Our minds or neuro sort of architecture is very flexible. And essentially, what makes us human, what separates us from all the great apes, is language, the sophistication of our communication skills and abstract, representationally symbolic language. And kind of, I guess, this came, what they are suggesting, we had a trade-off between our ability to remember things in the short term and the sort of long-term memory necessary to develop language. And it sort of makes sense, although it would make more sense if I finished watching the video. Perhaps I will. I might even pop in if I can find it again, a link, and you can watch it as well and come to your own conclusions. But it does look very interesting, and it's a plausible sounding theory. So this chatter, that's in our head is all connected with that. And it's all part of solving very important challenges that our primitive ancestors needed to solve, practical problems, when they came down from the trees and had neither the speed nor the strength to survive against much more bigger, more dangerous predators and more voracious hunters. So success came about because of the ability to organize themselves in an intelligent group unit. And part of all of that, part of the price we pay for all of that, is this internal chatter. But it solves a lot of other problems as well, I suspect. And I will let you know when I've finished reading the book. I did, of course, as always, watch one of those little 5-minute interviews with the author just to get some sort of flavour. And I thought I'd leave you with a very interesting practical suggestion that came from this morning TV interview that I watched with Dr. Ethan Kross. And this is, I haven't reached the point in the book, but he has already started talking about some research that a British social scientist was doing in New York, interviewing lots of different people about their sort of recollections of their internal monologue. And the practical advice that I saw on the sort of morning TV, Good Morning America or whatever the program is called, and I suspect it's all going to come together when I've read more than 23 pages. I keep on saying that. I feel a little guilty that I haven't done more research, but it's Friday, and I thought, what should I feel more guilty about? Not making a film or making a somewhat imperfect, wild stab at an idea? And of course, I went with the latter. So here we are. This is how we find ourselves where we do. His advice is that for more successful, constructive internal chatter, think about it this way. We're very good at giving other people advice, not so good at following it ourselves. So perhaps what we need to do is give ourselves that sort of advice. And a simple tactic is to start talking to ourselves in the third person. And young children are very adept at this. Adept, that's the word, not adapt. Adapted would be a different story. That's what we're going to do. We're going to adapt a young child strategy. We'll talk to ourselves. And by all accounts, that's a very important part in developing a whole range of social skills and problem-solving abilities that young children need to do in their first 5, 6 or 7 years. And I've actually had a little go at this during the very interesting. If you start referring to yourself in the third person, giving yourself instructions, that's curious, but my first gut instinct is that this might be a very good thing to do. I might not be doing it in the most effective sort of way. I will again let you know next week. But that's my tip for the day from Dr. Ethan Kross. Talk to yourself in the third person. Yes, that's it. That's all you're getting. And maybe a few interesting links in the description. I suspect on reflection, this is going to tie quite nicely in with my last few videos. And I think if we find successful ways of advising ourselves and controlling, reining in a constructive learning sort of way, our internal voice, which could be very powerful stuff. Anyway, I will find out. Or not. But that's it. Again, I find myself saying those words, and you perhaps, if you haven't switched off already, thinking, yes, Neil, that's it. Enough already. So trust you well. Trust your lives are filled with joy. And until next week, when there will be more of this madness, ciao from a sunny Brazil.